Hello and welcome back to Let's Play Jane's Fighters Anthology as we continue with the aircraft showcases. Now today, I believe we will be doing the E-2C Hawkeye. My apologies if that ends up making it into the recording. That was pretty staticky. I just wanted to turn down the volume in my headphones because it was a bit loud. But yeah, today we will be doing the E-2C Hawkeye. And it looks like we should be getting back to combat aircraft after... 2 more aircraft after this. We already did Prowlers and Eurofighters, I think, so we'd actually be pretty deep into this. Probably the F-104. I'll have to double check to make sure, but... So yeah, we'll be doing the E-2C today, and for that, we'll just be... taking a page out of the single missions. No need to make this overly complex. So I'm just going to modify us in the mission map there. And we can fly.
Stand by. Got one. There's one.
And we're going to start with an immediate takeoff. Okay, the cockpit zoom was well zoomed in. I was like, that seems way too zoomed in. So we can climb to altitude and then tone it down a bit. Turn down the volume on my end a bit more. So anyways, the E-2C Hawkeye, at least as it's modeled in this game. It's worth noting that nowadays we're up to the E-2D. But, so, this is an airborne early warning and control aircraft. The goal is to detect aircraft with a large radar system, which you can see affixed to the top of the aircraft, and then vector interceptors to deal with any incoming threats. So, some background. Continual improvements in airborne radars through 1956 led to the construction of AEW, or Airborne Early Warning Airplanes, by several different countries and several different armed forces. The functions of command and control and sea and air surveillance were also added. The first carrier-based aircraft to perform these missions for the U.S. Navy and its allies was the Douglas AD Skyraider, which was replaced in U.S. Navy service by the Grumman E-1 Tracer, which was a modified version of the F-2 Tracker twin-engine anti-submarine warfare aircraft, where the radar was carried in an aerofoil-shaped radome carried above the aircraft's fuselage. Actually, to add on to this, I believe actually the maybe not so much the command and control elements, but I believe some of the airborne early warning elements were actually first implemented, at least at sea, on specialized versions of the Grumman TBM Avenger, if I'm not mistaken, because I know there were modifications of those that had a radar put onto them, and I thought some were used for airborne early warning. Obviously, you wouldn't get much in the way of command and control, because you can only have, the default crew was, 2 gunners, a radio operator, or bombardier, and a pilot, I think? Something like that. Might only have been 1 gunner, because I think that bottom turret was remote controlled, if I remember correctly. But anyways, there was a variant with radar that was used, I believe, to direct nighttime attacks, or to conduct nighttime attacks itself in World War II, late World War II. And I think in the immediate post-war period, the Avengers served as kind of an interim airborne early warning aircraft. And then obviously when it was eventually replaced by the Skyraider, was replaced by that, and then later on by other stuff. But I digress here. So, going on to the E-2A and B Hawkeyes. In 1956, the U.S. Navy developed a requirement for an airborne early warning aircraft where its data could be integrated into the Naval Tactical Data System aboard the Navy's ships, with a design from Grumman being selected to meet this requirement in March 1957. Its design, initially designated W2F1, but later redesignated the E-2A Hawkeye under the new Tri-Service designation system, which you'll notice that, a lot of like the World War II stuff, you have, P-51 or F-4F, those were, each service had its own like unique designation system for equipment. And in the late 60s, or I think 71, I want to say it was, there was a realignment where all the services align their equipment designations under a single multi-service system, and that's what we use today. Anyways, but later redesignated, the E-2A Hawkeye was the first carrier plane that had been designed from its wheels up as an AEW and command and control airplane. The design engineers at Grumman faced immense challenges, including the requirement that the aircraft be able to operate from the older modified Essex-class aircraft carriers. These vessels were built during World War II and were smaller than modern carriers, being later modified to allow them to operate jet aircraft. Consequently, various height, weight, and length restrictions had to be factored into the E-2A design, resulting in some handling characteristics which were less than ideal. However, the E-2A never operated from the modified Essex aircraft carriers. Well, that's a waste then. You just sacrificed a lot of stuff for a capability that you never used. And actually, I'm kind of interested. I keep digressing, I'm sorry, but I am interested to see, now that, every carrier we operate is a super carrier, what the next generation airborne early warning aircraft will look like. They might even be drones with the way, with how things are going today. But, now that you don't have those restrictions, are they just going to replace, use a similar airframe but replace the props with a turbofan engine? Or, you could do so many different things, I feel. Which now brings into question the Soviet and later Chinese attempts to copy it as an airborne early warning aircraft for their carriers. Because if this was made with sacrifices in mind to fit into the Essex, and then you never fit into the Essex, then you're kind of needlessly crippling your design a little bit there. But anyways, I digress with my commentary, so let's get back to the facts. Okay. The first prototype, acting as an aerodynamic testbed only, flew on the 21st of October 1960. The first fully equipped aircraft followed it on 19th of April 1961 and entered service with the U.S. Navy as the E-2A in January 1964. By 1965, the project had accumulated so many development issues that it was canceled after 59 aircraft had already been built. In particular, difficulties were being experienced due to inadequate cooling in the closely packed avionics compartment. Early computers and complex avionics systems generated considerable heat and could fail without proper ventilation. These issues continued long after the aircraft entered service. At one point, reliability was so bad that the entire fleet of aircraft was grounded. After Navy officials had been forced to explain to Congress why 4 production contracts had been signed before avionics testing had been completed, action was taken. Grumman and the U.S. Navy scrambled to improve the design. The unreliable rotary drum computer was replaced by a Litton L304 digital computer, and various avionics systems were replaced. The upgraded aircraft were designated E-2Bs. In total, 49 of the 59 E-2As were upgraded to the E-2B standard. These aircraft replaced the E-1B tracers in the various U.S. Navy airborne early warning squadrons. Although the upgraded E-2B was a vast improvement on the unreliable E-2A, it was an interim measure. The U.S. Navy knew the design had much greater capability and had yet to achieve performance and reliability parameters set out in the original 1957 design. And now that we're at altitude, we can probably go down to a nice cruise speed there. In April of 1968, a reliability improvement program was initiated. In addition, now that the capabilities of the aircraft are starting to be realized, more were desired. 28 new E-2Cs were ordered to augment the 49 E-2Bs that would be upgraded. Improvements in the new and upgraded aircraft were concentrated in the radar and computer performance. 2 E-2A test machines were modified as E-2C prototypes, the first flying on the 20th of January 1971. Trials proved satisfactory and the E-2C was ordered into production. The first production aircraft performed its initial flight on the 23rd of September 1972. The original E-2C, known as Group 0, consisted of 55 aircraft. The first aircraft became operational in 1973 and serving on carriers in the 1980s and 1990s until they were replaced and first-line service by Group 2 aircraft. So, again, deviating again, but this means that when we were running our Vietnam campaign way back in the day, that was actually the first campaign I ran on this channel. And in my, I guess, hobby as a Let's Player, and actually the very first mission we did was the Vietnam campaign, the first mission of that. Well, this means that those E-2Cs that were providing our radar early warning services for those missions were brand new, because up until that point they had made only limited use of E-2Bs, if any use of those at all, and were primarily using the E-1B tracer. The U.S. Navy Reserve used some aircraft for tracking drug smugglers. The type was commonly used in conjunction with Grumman F-14 Tomcat fighters, monitoring airspace and then vectoring Tomcats over the link for a data link to destroy potential threats with long-range AIM-54C Phoenix missiles. The next production run, between 1988 and 1991, saw 18 aircraft built to the Group 1 standard. Group 1 aircraft replaced the E-2's older APS-125 radar and T-56A-425 turboprops with their successors, the APS-139 radar system and the T-56A-427 turboprops. First Group 1 aircraft entered service in August of 1981. I lost my spot here. Upgrading the Group 0 aircraft to Group 1 specifications was considered, but the cost was comparable to a new production aircraft, so upgrades were not conducted. Group 1 aircraft were only flown by the Atlantic Fleet squadrons. This version was followed within a few years by the Group 2, which had the improved APS-145 radar.
Inbound to waypoint Bravo, bearing
A total of 50 Group 2 aircraft were delivered, 12 being upgraded Group 1 aircraft. This new version entered service in June of 1992 and served with the Pacific and Atlantic Fleet squadrons. By 1997, the U.S. Navy intended that all frontline squadrons would be equipped for a total of 75 Group 2 aircraft. Grumman merged with Northrop in 1994, and plans began on the Group 2 Plus, also known as the Group 2 NAV upgrade. This kept the same computer and radar as the Group 2 while upgrading the pilot avionics, such as replacing the mechanical inertial navigation system with a more reliable and accurate laser ring gyroscope-driven INS, installing dual multifunction display units versus one in the Group 2 aircraft, and integrating GPS into the weapon system. Weapon system? They don't have a weapon system. Anyways, maybe they mean for weapon data links, because I don't know if this version was, but I know later versions of the E-2 are equipped with the cooperative engagement capability. Here I go, deviating in. Anyways, they're equipped with the cooperative engagement capability, which basically allows... so weapons aren't truly fire and forget. Not most weapons, anyways. I mean, some are, like the Sidewinder. But most weapons still have a data link, so they can pass or receive information from their launching aircraft. You know, with target upgrades like the AMRAAM, it's commonly considered fire and forget, and it can be. But for a long-range engagement, typically you'd fire it, but then provide a updates to it in flight, because as the target, you know, maybe the target makes decides to turn north all of a sudden, and you weren't expecting that. Well, you can feed that information in, and the missile will adjust its course so it continues to intercept the target. And the E-2 has the capability such that, you know, a Hornet can launch an AMRAAM, but then if the Hornet loses track of the target, the E-2 can pick up the data link and continue vectoring that missile in. So that's what cooperative engagement capability is, which will probably come up later in the article, but that's the only thing I can think of when they're talking about integrating GPS into a weapon system on an unarmed airborne early warning and control system. But anyways, a variant of the Group 2 with upgrades to the mission computer and CIC workstations is referred to as the MCU ACIS. These were produced in small numbers due to production of the Hawkeye 2000 soon after its introduction. All Group 2 aircraft had their 1960s vintage computer processors replaced by a mission computer with the same functionality via modern computer technology, referred to as the GR2M Reaper, which that's how it's spelled, is GRIIM space REPR, but obviously pronounced Grim Reaper, which is the Group 2 Mission Computer Replacement Program. Another upgrade to the Group 2 was the Hawkeye 2000, which featured the same APS-145 radar but incorporated an upgraded mission computer and combat information center workstation. the Advanced Control Indicator Set, or ACIS, and carries the U.S. Navy's new Cooperative Engagement Capability Data Link System. So, yeah, just winning that. It is also fitted with a larger capacity vapor cycle avionics cooling system. Starting in 2000... Oh, my apologies, my power supply is doing a self-test apparently, so my apologies if you hear any loud, shrill beeping, as that is just the self-test functionality of my APS. Starting in 2007, a hardware and software upgrade package began to be added to the existing Hawkeye 2000 aircraft. This upgrade allows faster processing, double current track file capacity, and access to satellite information networks. Hawkeye 2000 cockpits being upgraded include solid-state glass displays and a GPS approach capability. The remaining Hawkeye Group 2 nav upgrade aircraft received GPS approach capability but did not get the solid-state glass displays. In 2004, the E-2C's propeller system was changed to a new 8-bladed propeller system named MP2000, which was developed by the Hamilton Sundstrand Company to replace the old 4-bladed design. Improvements included reduced vibrations and better maintainability as a result of the ability to remove prop blades individually instead of having to remove the entire prop in a hub assembly. The propeller blades are of carbon fiber construction with steel leading edge inserts and de-icing boots at the root of the blade. And finally, the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye, once considered for replacement by the common support aircraft, this concept was abandoned. The latest E-2 version is the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye, which features an entirely new avionics suite, including the new AN/APY-9 radar, radio suite, mission computer, integrated satellite communications, flight management system, improved T-56A-427 engines, a glass cockpit, and aerial refueling. Really, they weren't added to the D. Okay, that's see, even I'm learning stuff by reading this. The AP-9 radar features an active electronically scanned array, or ASA, which adds electronic scanning to the mechanical rotation of the radar and its radar. The E-2D includes provisions for the co-pilot to act as a tactical force operator, or T4O, who can reconfigure his main cockpit display to show radar, IFF, Link 16, JTIDS, cooperative engagement capability, and access all required data. The E-2D's first flight occurred on the 3rd of August 2007. On the 8th of May 2009, an E-2D used its cooperative engagement capability system to engage an overland cruise missile with a standard missile SM-6 fired from another platform in an integrated fire control system test. These two systems will form the basis of the Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter-Air, or NIFC-CA, when fielded in 2015. The USN is investigating adding other systems to the NIFC-CA network in the future. The APY-9 radar has been suspected of being capable of detecting fighter-sized stealth aircraft, which are typically optimized against high frequencies like Ka, Ku, X, C, and parts of the S-band. Small aircraft lack the size or weight allowances for all-spectrum low observable features, leaving a vulnerability to detection by the UHF-band APY-9 radar, potentially detecting 5th-generation fighters like the Russian Sukhoi Su-57 and the Chinese Chengdu J-20 and the Shenyang J-31. Historically, UHF radars had resolution and detection issues that made them ineffective for accurate targeting and fire control. Northrop Grumman and Lockheed claim that the APY-9 has solved these shortcomings in the APY-9 using advanced electronic scanning and high digital computing power via space-time adaptive processing, according to the Navy's NIFC-CA fire truck concept. The E-2D could guide fleet weapons such as AIM-120 AMRAAM and SM-6 missiles onto targets beyond a launch platform's detection range or capabilities. I'm going to cut it back a little more so I don't overspeed the aircraft. Deliveries of initial production E-2Ds began in 2010. On the 4th of February 2010, Delta One conducted the first E-2D carrier landing aboard the USS Harry S. Truman as a part of carrier suitability testing. On the 20th of September 2011, an E-2D was successfully launched by the prototype Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System, or EMALS, at Naval Air Engineering Station Lakehurst. On the 12th of February 2013, the Office of the Secretary of Defense approved the E-2D to enter full-rate production. The Navy plans for an initial operational capability by 2015. In June of 2013, the 10th E-2D was delivered to the Navy with an additional 10 aircraft in various stages of manufacturing and pre-delivery flight testing. On the 18th of July 2013, Northrop Grumman was awarded a $113.7 million contract for 5 full-rate production Lot 2 E-2D Advanced Hawkeye aircraft. On the 13th of August 2013, Northrop Grumman was awarded a $617 million contract for 5 E-2Ds until full-rate production Lot 1. On the 30th of June 2014, Northrop Grumman was awarded a $3.6 billion contract to supply 25 more E-2Ds for a total contracted number of 50 aircraft. 13 E-2D models have been delivered by that time. In December of 2016, an E-2D flew for the first time fitted with an aerial refueling capability. This feature will allow the aircraft to double its time on station to 5 hours and increase total mission time from 4 to 7 hours. The refueling modification will start being built into the 46th plane out of 75 plan for delivery in late 2020, costing an additional $2 million per aircraft, and the Navy plans to retrofit the feature on all previous Hawkeyes for $6 million per plane. As far as the design goes, the E-2 is a high-wing airplane with one Allison 256 turboprop engine on each wing and retractable tricycle landing gear. As with all carrier-borne airplanes, the E-2 is equipped with a tailhook for recovery, and the nose gear can attach to the shuttle of the aircraft carrier's catapults for launch. A distinguishing feature of the Hawkeye is its 24-foot diameter rotating radar dome that is mounted above its fuselage and wings. This carries the E-2's primary antennas for its long-range radar and IFS systems. No other carrier-borne aircraft possesses one of these, although I know China is working on one, and the Soviets had concepts for one that, of course, they named the Hawkeye Ski. Land-based aircraft with rotodomes include the Boeing E-3 Sentry, a larger AWACS airplane operated by the U.S. Air Force and NATO air forces in large numbers. The similarly placed stationary radome of the E-2's piston-engined predecessor, the E-1 Tracer, also mandated the E-2's adoption of a modern version of Grumman's stow-wing folding wing system, preventing the folded wing panels from making contact with the E-2's rotodome. The aircraft is operated by a crew of 5, with the pilot and co-pilot on the flight deck, and a combat information center officer, air control officer, and radar operator stations located in the rear fuselage directly beneath the rotodome. In U.S. service, the E-2 Hawkeye provides all-weather airborne early warning and command and control capabilities for all aircraft carrier battlegroups. In addition, its other purposes include sea and land surveillance, control of the aircraft carrier's fighter planes for air defense, control of strike aircraft on offensive missions, the control of search and rescue missions for naval aviators and sailors lost at sea, relaying radio communications, air-to-air and ship-to-air communications, and it can also serve in an air traffic control capacity in emergency situations when land-based ATC is unavailable. The E-2C and E-2D Hawkeyes use advanced electronic sensors coupled with digital computer signal processing, especially its radars, for early warning of enemy aircraft attacks and anti-ship missile attacks, controlling the carrier's combat air patrol fighters, and secondarily for surveillance of the surrounding sea and land for enemy warships and guided missile launchers, and any other electronic surveillance missions as directed. Alright, so let's start lining up with the Ike here. Operational history. The E-2A entered U.S. Navy service in January 1964 and in April 1964 with VAW-11 at NAS North Island. The first deployment was aboard the aircraft carrier USS Kitty Hawk during 1965. Since entering combat during the Vietnam War, the E-2 has served the U.S. Navy around the world, acting as the electronic eyes of the fleet. In August 1991, a Hawkeye from VAW-124 Bear Aces directed 2 F-14 Tomcats from VF-41 Black Aces in an intercept mission in the Gulf of Sidra that resulted in the downing of 2 Libyan Sukhoi Su-22s, also known as the first Gulf of Sidra incident. Hawkeyes from VAW-123 aboard the aircraft carrier USS America directed a group of F-14 Tomcat fighters flying the combat air patrol during Operation El Dorado Canyon, the Joint Strike of 2 carrier battlegroups in the Mediterranean Sea against Libyan terrorist targets during 1986. Alright, start leveling off here. More recently, E-2Cs provided the command and control for both aerial warfare and land attack missions during the Persian Gulf War. Hawkeyes have supported the U.S. Coast Guard, the U.S. Customs Service, and American federal and state police forces during anti-drug operations. Actually, we could probably turn a little bit more inwards. Try to get a little more rotation there, so we can come around to the rear a bit faster. Let me check from... Okay, yep, we are coming around, just very slowly. In the mid-1980s, several U.S. Navy E-2Cs were made available to the U.S. Coast Guard and the U.S. Customs Service for counter-narcotics and maritime interdiction operations. This also led to the Coast Guard building a small cadre of naval flight officers, starting with the recruitment and inter-service transfer of Navy flight officers with E-2 flight experience and the flight training of other junior Coast Guard officers as NFOs. A fatal aircraft mishap on the 24th of August 1990, involving a Coast Guard E-2C at the former naval station Roosevelt Roads in Puerto Rico, prompted the Coast Guard to discontinue flying E-2Cs and to return its E-2Cs to the Navy. The U.S. Customs Service also returned its E-2Cs to the Navy and concentrated on the use of former U.S. Navy P-3 Orion aircraft in the counter-narcotics role. And in fact, I believe I went over it in a video on the P-3 itself. I think I did a video on that. But there is a specialized P-3 variant that actually looks a lot like the E-2 in that it has a rotodome, and that is primarily used by the Coast Guard currently for its drug interdiction and counter-narcotics missions, as well as just general border patrol or ocean patrol, as it were, of naval areas around the border. And you can actually see them. I forget which base they're stationed at. But I know if you just start looking through the tarmacs of various naval bases down south around the Gulf, you can find a base where those P-3s are based. E-2C Hawkeye squadrons played a critical role in the air operations during Operation Desert Storm. In one instance, a Hawkeye crew provided critical air control direction to 2 FA-18 Hornet aircrew. Where are we? Okay, I think we're about right. Sorry, I'm just, obviously landing and talking at the same time can be hazardous, so to speak. A Hawkeye crew provided critical air control direction to 2 FA-18 Hornet aircrew, resulting in the shootdown of 2 Iraqi MiG-21s. During Operation Southern Watch and Desert Fox, Hawkeye crews continued to provide thousands of hours of air coverage while providing air-to-air and air-to-ground command and control in a number of combat missions. The E-2 Hawkeye is a crucial component of all U.S. Navy carrier air wings. Each carrier is equipped with 4 Hawkeyes, or up to 5 in some situations, allowing for continuous 24-hour-a-day operation of at least 1 E-2, and for 1 or 2 to undergo maintenance in the aircraft carrier's hangar deck at all times. Until 2005, the U.S. Navy Hawkeyes were organized into East and West Coast wings supporting the respective fleets. However, the East Coast wing was disestablished. All aircraft were organized into a single wing based at Point Mugu, California. 6 E-2C aircraft were deployed by the U.S. Naval Reserve for drug interdiction and homeland security operations until the 9th of March 2013, when the sole reserve squadron BAW-77 Night Wolves was decommissioned and had 6 aircraft sent to other squadrons. During Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom, all 10 regular Navy Hawkeye squadrons flew overland sorties. They provided battle management for attack of enemy ground targets, close air support coordination, combat search and rescue control, airspace management, as well as data link and communication relay for both land and naval forces. During the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, 3 Hawkeye squadrons, 2 regular Navy and 1 Navy Reserve, were deployed in support of civilian relief efforts, including... Oops, I am way too slow now. Including air traffic control responsibilities, spanning 3 states, and the control of U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Marine Corps, U.S. Coast Guard, and Army National Guard and Air National Guard helicopter rescue units. Hawkeye 2000s first deployed in 2003 aboard USS Nimitz with VAW-117, the Wallbangers, formerly the Nighthawks, and Carrier Air Wing 11. The U.S. Navy E-2C Hawkeyes have been upgraded with 8-bladed propellers as part of the NP2000 program. The first squadron to cruise with the new propellers was VAW-124 Bear Aces. The Hawkeye 2000 version can track over 2,000 targets simultaneously while also detecting 20,000 targets to a range greater than 400 miles, and simultaneously guide 40 to 100 air-to-air intercepts or air-to-surface engagements. In 2014, several E-2C Hawkeyes from the Bear Aces of VAW-124 were deployed from USS George H.W. Bush as flying command posts and air traffic controllers over Iraq during Operation Inherent Resolve against the Islamic State. There we go, now I got a lock on the Ike. VAW-120, the E-2C Fleet Replacement Squadron, began receiving E-2D Advanced Hawkeyes for training use on July of 2010. On the 27th of March 2014, the first E-2Ds were delivered to the VAW-125. The E-2D achieved initial operational capability in October 2014 when VAW-125 was certified to have 5 operational aircraft. This began training on the aircraft for its first operational deployment, scheduled for 2015 aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt. The E-2D will play a larger role than that of the E-2C, with 5 E-2Ds aboard each carrier instead of the current 4 C models, requiring the acquisition of 75 total E-2Ds. On the 11th of March 2015, the Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group departed Naval Station Norfolk and returned to port on the 23rd of November 2015, concluding the first operational use of the E-2D. I think I got a little bit more time before we're really going to have to focus on landing on the Ike here. E-2 Hawkeyes have been sold by the U.S. federal government under the Foreign Military Sales Program to the armed forces of Egypt, France, Israel, Japan, Singapore, and Taiwan. Egypt purchased 5 E-2C Hawkeyes that entered service in 1987 and were upgraded to the Hawkeye 2000 standard. One additional upgraded E-2C was purchased, and the first upgraded aircraft was delivered in March 2003, and deliveries were concluded in late 2008. Egypt requested 2 additional Excess E-2C aircraft in October 2007, and deliveries began in 2010. They all operate in 601 AEW Brigade, Cairo West. Egypt used the E-2C Hawkeye in a bombing operation in 2015 against the Islamic State in Libya. The French Naval Aviation Group operates 3 E-2C Hawkeyes and has been the only operator of the E-2 Hawkeye from an aircraft carrier besides the U.S. Navy. The French nuclear-powered carrier Charles de Gaulle currently carries 2 E-2C Hawkeyes on her combat patrols offshore. The third French E-2C Hawkeye has been upgraded with 8-bladed propellers as part of the NP2000 system, and in April 2007, France requested the purchase of an additional aircraft. The Flotilla 4F of the French Navy's Aeronaval was stood up on the 2nd of July 2000 and flies its E-2C Hawkeyes from its naval air station at Lambehoul, deploying to the Charles de Gaulle. They took part in operations in Afghanistan and in Libya. In September of 2019, Florence Parly, French Minister of the Armed Forces, announced that 3 new E-2D Advanced Hawkeyes would be purchased in 2020 to replace the E-2Cs in service. On September 6, 1976, Soviet Air Forces pilot Viktor Belenko successfully defected, landing his MiG-25 Foxbat at Hakodate Airport, Japan. During this incident, Japan Self-Defense Forces radar lost track of the aircraft when Belenko flew his MiG-25 at low altitude, prompting the JASDF to consider procurement of airborne early warning aircraft. Initially, the E-3 Sentry Airborne Warning Control System aircraft was considered to be the prime candidate for the airborne early warning mission by the JSDF. However, the Japanese Defense Agency realized that the E-3 would not be readily available due to USAF needs and opted to procure the E-2 Hawkeye instead. The Japan Air Self-Defense Force bought 13 E-2C aircraft to improve its early warning capabilities. The E-2C was put into service with the Airborne Early Warning Group at Misawa Air Base in January of 1987. On the 21st of November 2014, the Japanese Ministry of Defense officially decided to procure the E-2D version of the Hawkeye instead of the Boeing 737 AWC design. In June 2015, the Japanese government requested to buy 4 E-2Ds through a foreign military sale. In September 2018, the Defense Security Cooperation Agency notified Congress of the possible sale of up to 9 E-2Ds to Japan. And now I've got to focus. Yeah, we're 1 mile out from the carrier, so I've got to actually focus on flying this bucket now. I'm actually surprised we aren't getting an ILS landing. Or no. Oh, we're 5 miles out. What's the R then? Oh, that must be to the waypoint. Yeah, okay, so that was to the waypoint. There we go. Now it's giving... I was wondering why it was taking so long for that to pop up. Alright, so I will say, at least as far as its performance in-game, obviously it's not using a tailor-made model, but, you know, it's pretty easy flying. Slow, not very responsive. Oh, shit. It's been so long since I did a carrier landing, I forgot to lower my hook, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy flying. Just don't try doing anything crazy with it, and you'll do fine.
Higher. Higher. Higher.
All right, now we gotta go right.
3 miles. Higher. Higher. Higher.
Now I went too far right because I'm getting too distracted.
Higher.
I'm always naughty though, and when they say higher, I generally don't listen because I'm like, well, eventually I'll be at the point where I'm right altitude.
Higher. Higher.
And honestly, at 2 miles, we should be getting there.
Higher. Higher.
It's got to come left more. Port, I should say.
Steady.
Yeah. See, now we're too now we're too low or too high.
Steady.
There we go.
Call the ball.
On the ball. We're a little on the high side, but I think we can do this.
Lower. Lower.
All right.
Lower.
Yep. I was prepared for that.
Higher. Mission accomplished.
There we go.
Fair landing.
And we even got a fair landing from it. How about that? So let's park ourselves here. I think I'm going to go lazy and just take the nearest elevator here. Nope, not going to do that because there's a mule there. I guess I'll go for this elevator. There we go. No mules there. Alright, just gotta... Need a little more throttle to finish up what we're doing here. And turn it around. Actually, we got a lot more to go. I can put this baby on the edge. There we go. Okay, we're not perfectly aligned. Wow, this thing just stops on a dime. No, I'm turning. Need more throttle. Okay, before I wreck myself here and run into something, I think we'll just we'll leave it there. So, in 2004, 3 former Israeli Air Force E-2C aircraft were sold to the Mexican Navy to perform maritime and shore surveillance missions. These aircraft were upgraded locally by IAI. The first Mexican E-2C was rolled out in January of 2004. Also, the Republic of Singapore Air Force acquired 4 Grumman E-2C Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft in 1987, which are assigned to the 111 Squadron Jaeger based at Tengah Air Base. I'm surprised. Singapore, sorry. My mind was skipping ahead to Israel, and I'm like, that's a weird choice for them to use a German word for their own squadrons, but that would explain it because it's not Israel. In April 2007, it was announced that the 4 E-2C Hawkeyes were to be replaced with 4 Gulfstream G550s, which would become the primary early warning aircraft of the Singapore Air Force. On the 13th of April 2012, the newer G550 AEWs officially took over duty from the former. Singapore has close ties with the Israeli military, which has also acquired the G550 AEW. And Israel, as it so happens, was the first export customer, having 4 Hawkeyes delivered during 1981, complete with the folding wings characteristic of carrier-borne aircraft. The 4 examples were soon put into active service before and during the 1982 Lebanon War, during which they won a resounding victory over Syrian air defenses and fighter control. They were central to the Israeli victory in the air battles over the Bekaa Valley, during which over 90 Syrian fighters were downed. The Hawkeyes were also the linchpins of the operation in which the IAF destroyed the surface-to-air missile array in the Bekaa Valley, coordinating the various stages of the operation, vectoring planes into bombing runs, and directing intercepts. Under constant escort by F-15 Eagles, there were always 2 Hawkeyes on station off the Lebanese coast, controlling the various assets in the war and detecting any Syrian aircraft upon their takeoff, eliminating any chance of surprise. Excuse me. The Israeli Air Force operated 4 E-2s for its homeland AEW protection through 1994. The IAF was the first user of the E-2 to install air-to-air refueling equipment. 3 of the 4 Israeli-owned Hawkeyes were sold to Mexico in 2002 after they had been upgraded with new systems. The remaining example was sent to be displayed in the Israeli Air Force Museum. In 2010, Singapore began retiring its E-2Cs as well. Both Israel and Singapore now employ the Israeli Aerospace Industries ITAM, a Gulfstream G550 based platform with ELTA's EL/W-2085 sensor package, a newer derivative of the airborne Falcon system for their national AEW programs. And finally, Taiwan. Taiwan acquired 4 E-2T aircraft from the U.S. on the 22nd of November 1995, which is that a trainer variant? Nope, special made for Taiwan, actually. Which was basically cobbled together from leftover parts from E-2Bs, it sounds like. With parts taken from retired E-2Bs, however, they have the same level of electronics as the E-2C Group 2 Hawkeyes with their APS-145 radars, and are referred to T. And when they were eventually, Taiwan also got some Hawkeye 2000 aircraft, and the older E-2Ts were upgraded to the same standard, and those upgraded aircraft are referred to as E-2Ks. Good, so now we have context for this. On the 15th of April 2006, Taiwan commissioned 2 new E-2K Hawkeyes at an official ceremony at the Republic of China Air Force Base in Pingtung Airport in southern Taiwan. The 4 E-2Ts were approved for upgrade to Hawkeye 2000 configuration in 2008 arms deal. The 4 E-2T aircraft were upgraded to what became known as the E-2K standard in 2 batches. The first batch of 2 aircraft were sent to the United States in June 2010, arriving home in late 2011. On their return, the second batch of 2 aircraft were sent for upgrade, returning to Taiwan in March of 2013. And there have been several other offers made for, one other offer made for the Hawkeye. And in August 2009, the U.S. Navy and Northrop Grumman briefed the Indian Navy on the E-2D Advanced Hawkeye on its potential use to satisfy its current shore-based and future carrier-based airborne early warning and control system requirements. The Indian Navy has reportedly expressed interest in acquiring up to 6 Hawkeyes. Well, that about does it, and with that little Taiwan group that pretty much runs us through the all the variants as well. We ran through all the operators. So specifications for the E-2C. as previously stated, crew of 5, pilot, co-pilot, radar officer, combat information center officer, and aircraft control officer. The aircraft is 57 feet and 8 3/4 inches long, with a wingspan of 80 feet 7 inches and a height of 18 feet 3 3/4 inches. And the radome can actually retract by 2 feet to fit into the 17-foot 6-inch clear height hangar of the Essex and Midway class carriers. However, that function is no longer used, as it's no longer necessary, or never was, I guess, to begin with, at least for the Essex class, since it never operated from them. It has an empty weight of 40,200 pounds and a gross weight of 43,068 pounds. A max takeoff weight of 57,500 pounds, and the power plant and its base model is 2 Allison Rolls-Royce T56A427 turboprops with 5,100 SHP each. What is that, standard horsepower? I forget. I'm more comfortable with just kilowatts. Give me kilowatts. Give me metric. But they give out 3,800 kilowatts each. Has a max speed of 350 knots, so pretty slow for a modern aircraft. Cruise speed of 256 knots, but it has a ferry range of 1,462 miles, an endurance of 6 hours or 8 if being operated from land, and a service ceiling of 34,700 feet, which is actually a fair bit higher than I thought. I thought it was only 30,000 feet. Still not as high as like a dedicated land-based unit like the E-3, but far better than nothing for something that can fly off in an aircraft carrier. And that about does it. So I think we are done here for tonight. Alright, so obviously for this mission, it was just basic flight training, takeoff, land, so it's going to say success even though we did nothing. But yeah, that's pretty much a summary of the E-2 to date. And with that, thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for next time, and stay safe out there, and we'll see you then.